The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel, and during this meeting, when asked to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your general direction and everyone to hear you. Before we begin the formal agenda, I am obliged to read the following fire notice. There is no fire drill scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, then please could I ask you to make your way out of the building, down the main staircase and out of the main doors of the Town Hall and congregate at the entrance to Caldicott Park. An officer of the council will give instructions on when it is safe to return to the building. Okay, so if we begin the agenda, we've got the minutes of the last meeting held on the 16th of September. Is everybody in agreement that I sign these? Okay. Right, we have item 2, which is apologies. We have apologies from Councillor Shrivastava. We have apologies, I think, from Councillor Parker and Councillor Thomas. We also have apologies from Councillor Maggie O'Rourke as the portfolio holder for leisure, although we have the Chief Officer here. Item 3 is declarations of interest. So I'd like to receive declarations on non-pecuniary interests, pecuniary interests, or non-payment of council tax. That's usually the one, isn't it? Community charge or council tax. Okay, everybody happy with that? Right, we will move on to item 4, which is the Ben Hall booking system, which we asked to be brought here for a review. We don't have the portfolio holder here. She has given her apologies. But I'm sure, Tom, that you'll present the report, and any questions that are really should be directed at the portfolio holder, we'll ask you to just take them forward for us. Okay. Right. Over to you. Oh, sorry.
I'll use this one. I'll just move slightly. Thank you, Chair. So the Ben Hall booking policy paper sets out, first of all, what the Ben Hall is. It is essentially the council civic hall function, delivering a raft of community events, commercial activities and corporate functions. The booking process and the policy itself is covered in the conditions of letting, which is our legal framework for how we take bookings, how we advertise, our right to cancel, what the fire precautions are, security arrangements, etc. As a operation, so the council operated the Ben Hall from 2013 after we brought it back in-house from DC Leisure, who used to operate the Ken Marriott Leisure Centre. The management of the booking process is inquiries are received by email or by phone. They are then asked to complete our booking form with conditions of letting, for which then that's reviewed by the operation management and confirmed, deposits taken, full payment done 2 weeks before final event is due to take place. It sets out what we will and won't advertise, whether we will set out their ticket allocations, whether we will process them ourselves, or whether an event holder will do that themselves, and any grounds that we may have to cancel a booking should it be required. In terms of the types of bookings that the management are authorised to take, it is anything that is within the Ben Hall business plan. So we updated the business plan back in, let me just check my date, it is 2023 to 2027. So we work on a 5-year business plan, sets out what we do in terms of corporate functions, weddings, private hire, etc. And then bookings are taken in accordance with that, in accordance to our availability. As a local authority, the rules and the governance around that relate to the public sector equality duty. So we should be ensuring that any activity delivered by us as a council and thereby the Ben Hall doesn't cause any conflict with the public sector equality duty and maintaining community harmony. And that's the brief summary of the report, Chair.
It says here that you'll take bookings, to use some shorthand, from all comers, but do you have a filtering process, for example, where you have bookings for the same day from more than one party, or bookings where you consider they don't fall within our community standards? How would you apply that policy?
So all the bookings received initially is either verbal or written, and the management would take a referral through the calendar process. So there are 3 spaces within the Ben Hall that can be publicly hired. That's the Caldicott Bar, the main hall and the Rugby room. So there would always be a cross-reference over what bookings are already in place. We currently have bookings from a sort of a standing item, so fairs, markets, they're booked up until 2028 already, so we have long-standing bookings in place. Other bookings are ad hoc as they're received, cross-reference to the calendar of what's actually already in, can we facilitate it, staff rota, staff hours, and a decision operationally there. So a first review. Type of booking that comes in would be operational management discretion about whether it fits the business plan of the organisation. Is it appropriate of what we're trying to deliver, of what we're trying to achieve? So Ben Hall is a venue for the Borough of Rugby, for the residents to come and do community activity, events, music, comedy, theatre shows, etc. And then if there are questions around whether something is appropriate, that can be escalated from the manager through to the chief officer, and then should it be needed, that can be escalated through to the chief executive. But largely all operational management decisions are taken as a management team within the building, if that helps.
Thank you. I think you pretty much answered my question. However, I would like to say that sometimes the times that we live in, it's got to be quite ethical. You know, some of those events, we've got to check out whether they're ethical. The other thing I'd say as well, are any of these events people saying, you know, particular speeches or things that could be inflammatory or offensive, and also and potentially against the Equality Act. So how would you deal with those kind of events?
So I think in the first instance, when a booking is received, it is on the management team to review that, to understand what the booking is, and they can be received multiple years in advance. Like I say, we are taking bookings into 2028 already. And I think from that point on, it's about having a fluid approach to whether something is still appropriate as we move forward, because a situation may change. So a booking that may be deemed appropriate in the past, a situation may change, an opinion may change, and that then has to be considered on a future basis.
So when these bookings are taken on, do you have like a system to vet them, to see, you know, who they are, which speakers are going to be attending, all this kind of thing, just to make sure that everything is done in the most ethical way?
Yes. In terms of the types of bookings that we would usually receive, they're normally from professional production companies. So we wouldn't be approached by particular individuals. We'd be approached by production companies. They would either, so I'll give you an example of Five Star Theatre. They are a local company. They book us on a regular basis. They deliver our theatre shows and our panto shows every year. We've got quite a good customer relationship with that client and strong performance. If we have something new, so there's a Chuckle Rugby is coming shortly to the Ben Hall. That's got 4 or 5 different comedians within it, so they are the hire is from the production company, and they obviously have their terms and conditions of what they put on. But yes, there will be a requirement for the management staff to vet the booking, see what is appropriate. Does it meet our business plan? Does it meet the needs of what we're trying to deliver for the town as a commercial venue?
And also, would that be a yes on ethical concerns?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from Councillor Sayani's comments, obviously these things are in place, so the controversial question is what went badly wrong with the Katie Hopkins event? What happened there, and why was that allowed to be booked? Wasn't there any research going into that, because it was a bit of a nightmare for the whole council and at risk of bringing the council into disrepute? So what happened with that booking, please?
So the production company made a booking in 2024, I believe, and at that time a booking processed. The cancellation that occurred wasn't due to a booking issue or a standards issue. I think, as our public statement said, there was a issue of community tension and protest that then meant that the event wasn't safe to continue. So whilst that cancellation happened, it was due to obviously our public statement of the public safety. In terms of that booking coming in, we received that from the booking agent that we'd had a previous relationship with, and taken on good faith.
I appreciate that may be sort of more directly aimed at the portfolio holder, but thanks for answering it in that way. Thank you.
So I'd like to say a big thank you to Rugby Council for looking at safety issues, etc. So thank you very much.
Got a couple of questions. If we can go to probably back to that matter, what is your rationale for cancelling and booking and not paying any compensation when you do it last minute? First part of the question. And second, how often have you used this power?
So our conditions of letting set out that we are allowed to cancel any booking at any time at our discretion. That is known to the hirer of any event. So when we are taking into consideration a dynamic risk assessment, we have to make a decision that may change from one day to the next, but our terms and conditions clearly set out that we are allowed to take a cancellation at any point, and that the hirer has no recourse to claim from us. That booking itself, the hire fee was returned because it was deemed that it wasn't through the fault of the production company who had hired us, so their booking fee was returned to them. In terms of other bookings that we've had to cancel, I couldn't give a direct answer now, but I've been involved with the Ben Hall for a number of years, and this is possibly the first one that I've been involved in. I don't recall having to do another cancellation before.
As a result of cancelling the way you did, somebody might not want to use the Ben Hall because they have the risk of cancellation last minute, maybe not their fault, and no compensation is paid. So this goes to the viability of the hall, okay, and the commercial viability. So my question to you is, what levels of risk have you got in terms of commercial viability? And what are you doing to mitigate those types of risks?
So I think I'd refer us back to the fact that we've got that 5-year business plan setting out what we're looking to achieve, what we're looking to deliver as a venue in terms of supporting the town centre, putting on the types of events, working closely with our partners and those production companies that we've got the relationships with, the local companies that we've got relationships with, and making sure we've got a robust calendar of events on offer. I think we are well placed to be delivering that. As I said earlier, the events that we're taking in, we've got bookings. Most weekends are booked for events and shows over 2026 into 2027, starting to take 2028. It's about placing the Ben Hall as the venue of choice for people in rugby to come and see commercial events, activities, rather than having to travel out of town. In terms of level of risk, I think it's an operational management decision about, is something appropriate for us? Does it meet our values and standards? Is it something that we think the people of rugby want to see? And we go from there.
I'm curious about this. You take your bookings mainly from production companies, presumably. What sort of screening process is in place? And could you give us some examples? I'm not asking you to name names, but where the screening process has said that is absolutely something that is not for rugby. Because you mentioned the values and standards. I'm curious as to how they're applied.
So the standards for rugby would be whether it enables the council to comply with the Public Sector Equality Act. If we believe that it would cause community tension or it would bring community disharmony amongst different groups, then I think we would have to make an informed decision that wouldn't be appropriate as a council-run venue to book. And that's at a point of receiving the booking form in the first place. And what was the first part of the question, sorry?
Well, I was curious how this applied in practice. What sort of events or acts would we absolutely not be putting on?
So I'd also would like to take the opportunity to say it's not just events and ticketed shows that we have put on. So on the Ben Hall website, you will see there is a raft of different shows that are ticketed. But we range from NHS blood taking on a monthly basis, corporate room hire, so the county council often use us for forums, for community events, whether we host our own climate events, whether we host a variety of different workshops. Next week we'll be doing all staff briefings from there. So there is a very, very varied programme of activity that is supplemented by commercial events that are ticketed. Again, it's just working with those partners that we know. When we get new requests in, it's actually what are they looking to deliver. Give a different example. If we were working with a wrestling promoter and they had us booked in for 4 shows a year, if we had another wrestling promoter come to us to say, can we put a show on, we might take an informed management decision to say, actually, we've already got 4 wrestling shows within our programme. Do we need another 4 wrestling shows in our programme through a different promoter? Are we diluting an offer? We'd probably take a management decision to say we don't need a second wrestling promoter doing additional events. So it's kind of weighing up the balance of what we're offering as well. So we aren't just comedy shows, we aren't just theatre shows. It's trying to achieve a balance and really hit that business plan.
I think you've made some really good points, and thank you for doing that. The other thing I wanted to mention was creative arts. Very important, I think, in a thriving for the economy as well, for the local economy as well as for a thriving society, and for people to be able to attend all these productions. Good for the mental health, good for quality of life. So, with all that being said, are we going to be developing and increasing and getting higher end shows coming to rugby? And what about the facilities currently? Do you think there's more scope that we should have better facilities? And because I'm one for saying that creative arts should be at the top of our agenda, really, because I think it's just like assets, you know, they should be our heritage sites, all that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering, can you envision more for us?
A bit of a yes/no answer. So in terms of what we are able to deliver from the Ben Hall at the moment, we obviously have a maximum room capacity. So a touring show could sell 450 seats at approximately £30 per head. So we know we've got, say, a £15,000 income from ticket sales. So there will be different types of production companies that are happy to work knowing a ceiling on a revenue. So if we had a revitalised venue, a new build, you would look to have the introduction of rake seating, you'd look to have a 650 to 700 seater auditorium, you'd have multiple bars. As we are at the moment, I would say the Ben Hall has comparable shows and events to what other civic halls you would see across the area. We know that because we see the production companies are delivering at other venues. So almost a glass ceiling, but a physical ceiling. So as an example, the stage doesn't have flying facilities. So we wouldn't be able to bring a West End show to come to the Ben Hall if they're doing a touring show that need a flying facilities, because we don't have that facility. But in a town centre regeneration, a refurbishment of a building, we know what we would like to achieve in terms of audience capacity, facilities within the building, bar function. There's no doubt the Ben Hall's well placed within the town centre. It's got 400 car parking spaces next to it. It's in the middle of the town. People can go to eat and drink beforehand. The location's great. But yeah, there's a limit to what you can get in with the capacity and the function that we've got.
I think you quite rightly said that it is about capacity at the moment. What I would say is that I've just been to Stockport not too long ago, and they have a fantastic plaza in Stockport. And I've got to say that I went to see Michael Jackson actually there, and it was fantastic, really good. And I just think that, you know, maybe there could be two types of venues in rugby. I'd really like to see that. I don't know how we're going to bring that about, but I'd like to see, you know, obviously for people who need affordability in terms of hiring a venue, but also in terms of another type of venue where we could actually encourage more bigger bands, bigger shows, and get more creative arts to rugby, because I think that's a really good feel-good factor. So whatever we can do right across the house, I think would be fantastic.
So in terms of the town as well, absolutely, arts, culture, music, entertainment has a massive role to play in people's well-being. It creates them the opportunity to be out of the house, reduces social isolation. It's about stimulating their lifestyle. So it has a huge role in health and well-being of the residents. Rugby is well served to an extent. We've got Rugby Theatre, we've got the Macready Theatre, we've got our own art gallery museum, we've got the Ben Hall, and we've got our parks and open spaces. But yeah, having that focus delivers a big impact socially.
I was down at the Ben Hall not so long ago. I picked up one of the programmes of what's on in the next few months, and it strikes me it's a bit of a mishmash, isn't it? You know, we've got tribute bands, we have exhibitions, we have comedians, some which are funnier than others. Is this programme responding to the inquiries, or is it shaped by a policy or a vision about what the Ben Hall is about and what it should be showing?
So very much shaped by what the business plan we have in place and the type of venue that it is. I think as I set out in the start of the report, it's a community hall function for the people of Rugby, from a bequeathment from the Ben family for a community hall for the people of Rugby. So rather than a mishmash of activity, I think it's catering for different tastes and different opportunities for people to engage in. So a Sunday morning craft fair, antiques fair, CD and record fair will get a different person out of their house and coming into the town centre, to a young person that might attend or a parent that might attend one of the theatre shows with their children, versus possibly an older generation for the tribute acts, because there is a place in the world for our tribute acts. So it's about making sure we've got a diversification of activity to actually cater for everybody, rather than having one niche specialist product that we might only reach a certain type of audience. But yeah, the Ben Hall business plan sets that out for us.
I think that's fantastic that you have got this, you know, it's like a community hall in pretty much, and attracting all these tribute bands and all the rest of it. I think that's fantastic. But I also think that there is scope for younger people who are attracted to other sorts of things. And if we can develop that through our processes within different parties, however it works, I'm not too familiar with everything, but I would really like to see more creative arts in rugby. So whatever we can do to do that.
I think I want to go back to the reason why we're here. Okay, you know, there was a tour going on. It was a 42-stop tour. On the 38th night of that tour, it got cancelled at Rugby. So it wasn't a tour that was just started. It was actually all the way through, or just about to finish. Now, whether we like the taste of the comedian involved, because I think you could argue it's a case of taste, and it's not necessarily my taste, so please don't take that as being the road. It was another group that were the troublemakers. They were the ones that said that they were cause of protest. So we have caved to a protest from a politically sponsored group. 4 Labour MPs are on the executive of that group. And therefore there is a feeling that there is a political bias here. Now, we'll have the conversation, because I want to bring this up, so we have that conversation. But ultimately, that's where it's been reported. So if you take that tour and you ask for any issues with that tour, it's Rugby that comes up, not anywhere else. No other cancellations on that tour. I tried it yesterday, okay? No other cancellations. So I just want to put the issue out, because I think that's why we're here on this particular thing. So not my opinion, but I think it's the issue to talk about. 38th event of a 42-night tour, and it gets cancelled under political pressure and Rugby.
Just to confirm, there was another cancellation in the Midlands that did take place that happened before Rugby. Obviously no need to name the venue, but that received various press as well. In terms of the cancellation that happened, would refer back to the statement. So as a local authority, we have a duty to respond to our community, and we have a duty to respond to what is happening in the community and what is presented to us as fact. So the leaflet distribution, the various protests and community intelligence that is received. Operationally, we have to make a decision about whether we are fulfilling our public sector equality duty and whether we are maintaining our safety of an event delivery. Ultimately, if an event happens, any event happens, if we believe we can't deliver it as a local authority safely, we have a duty to make sure the attendees of that event are safe. And that's an operational decision that we will have to make on each occasion.
John, you wanted to... I'll come to you, Councillor Simon.
Chair, thank you very much. If I may, of course, I would just draw to your attention, you've already made the point very plain that tonight the portfolio member, who is the elected political member for this policy, is not in the room. The officer, of course, is here to implement that choice. I know the questions are now veering into mentions of politics. I'm sure members will do their best, but I'm mindful that the officer is just here to do his best to explain the operational matters. Chair, of course, you're aware of that.
I was just going to say that, to be honest, I feel quite afraid of certain types of events. This is from a personal perspective, mainly because sometimes the kind of language or rhetoric coming from any kind of event that encourages stereotypes or disinformation or humiliation or any kind of dehumanization of people and dignity, I think is very, very important. And I think it doesn't matter which side it comes from or who it comes from or where it comes from. There is the matter of free speech, so I think that is also important. However, there is also things that can be quite offensive, and I think that we have to start scrutinising actually what is offensive, what is dehumanising, what are the stereotypes, without us actually having to use the word racism, because it is racism involved in it as well. So if we use all these terms, we have to start thinking very, very carefully about the society we want to live in, the type of harmony we want to create. And I'm very proud of our council right now, because I feel that they've thought very carefully about they've obviously had to lose some money over it, but then they've repaid the money. And I think it's important to balance the economics with the societal effect, because people on the streets, people like myself, and I'm sure there's many others, who actually are afraid right now from all quarters, doesn't matter what, whether you're Asian or not, are feeling afraid because of people who are free to say whatever they like and disguise it, but actually beneath it is a sense of racism. And I think we have to understand that, and we now need to unpick that in our society, because if we don't, we're going down a very, very dark place, and I don't want to see any one of us to go down there.
I actually fully understand what you said, and I wanted to bring out the conversation because this is the reason we ended up here tonight. The problem is always the balance, particularly when comedy is involved, with freedom of speech. And I think it's a very hard decision to make when something is acceptable or not acceptable, particularly when comedy, because if you close down comedy to talk about things, you'll never have any freedom of speech at all. So there is no, there is no right or wrong here, I think, and it's the balance, and operationally, I think somebody has to make the decision. And the reason we're here in Scrutiny is just to talk through that, and that's all.
So if we look at schools, bullying is also sometimes comical. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm going to mention it. It's not. It's connected.
I think this is off topic.
No, it's connected to this actually.
How is it connected?
Because I'm going to tell you why. But if you let me finish the sentence, I'll tell you why. So bullying at schools is also connected sometimes to comedy. So sometimes people can make fun of other people and they can think it's funny, but actually, when it comes down to the type of rhetoric that comes from certain events or groups or whoever's doing it, I think it's not just comical, it becomes actual rhetoric that's actually wrapped up in bullying. And I don't really think that is the type of society I want to live in. So yeah, I use that as a way to describe exactly how people feel. It is an element of bullying involved, because when we are using stereotypes, when we are referring to people and their beliefs and their culture and all sorts of different things in a derogatory way, whether it be in a comedy or not, I don't think any comedy should be using any kind of racism at all.
If we should move on, I think. This is about the booking policy for the Ben Hall, and I think getting into a debate about society as a whole is not part of the booking policy. I think what was raised was the fact that something was cancelled, was only the one cancellation that you've ever been involved in rugby, and it was one of a tour of 42, and it was here in Rugby. And that's what we would like to understand.
That's what you say, Chair, but obviously this is something that maybe needs to be discussed on another day.
It is being discussed tonight. That's what we're here as Scrutiny to do. Councillor New.
I think going back to this whole controversial topic, you say there is a vetting process and people look at what's happening. Surely we acted in a reactive way rather than a proactive way. We need to be a little bit more careful about what sort of things we are allowing and thinking, is it going to incite racial discussions or hatred or anything else that we feel? We need to be a little bit more careful with the booking process, that we're not having rude or lewd or you know, defamatory people coming to the town that might stir up tensions or feelings of anger and frustration in people. So we need to be more proactive than reactive, I think. We've learned a lesson. Let's face it, we've learned a lesson. A lot of people have suffered as a result. So I think that's where we need to be just a little bit more careful of what we're allowing through our doors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor New. I think that's helpful. And I think that's the kind of comment that we'd like to put forward to the portfolio holder, and I'm sure that'll happen, that we get that proactive look. I do think the booking policy itself does cover these kinds of things, but then it comes down to how you implement that policy, and that is obviously a lesson learned and to be looked at. So thank you very much for coming tonight, Tom. I do appreciate that this has not been an easy topic for you without the portfolio holder here to help. So thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Scrutiny, for inviting me today. Slightly different report to what I tabled in Q1, because the Q2, so period ending 30th of September, information isn't actually being presented to Cabinet until the 1st of December, so the reports haven't been published as yet. So what I've included in this document is the draft Q2 position for the General Fund, the HRA, and also a summary of the performance reporting. Hopefully the cover report gives you a good flavour as to what's going on as part of the Q2 reporting. And also, although the end of the Q2 was the 30th of September, just the practicalities of pulling together the information and getting it on a committee timetable meant the earliest that we could table it to Cabinet was the 1st of December meeting. I suppose I'll leave it there and perhaps see if you've got any questions for me on the content of the report.
I suppose the thing is really on some of the red KPIs. Some of them seem to be rather persistent. It's the best way of doing it, and that's persistent from last year, not just this year. Is there any comment you would have about what are the operational challenges? What do you think you can do to try and take on some of those red issues?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lawrence. I suppose what we've adapted and what we've evolved as a process for 25-26 is where there is a red rated KPI. There's a suite of questions now that the responsible officer associated with these KPIs need to complete. There's 7 questions around the reason for the KPI over and above what's already in the dashboard, and also what corrective action is going to take place in order to improve the performance. what you can see from the table in the report on page 7 of the report that I've sent through, that circulated, there was 5 red KPIs at quarter 2. There's 4 now. 5 at quarter 1, 4 now at quarter 2. 2 have gone from red to green, which is really positive, and we've had one actually move the other way. But certainly as part of this process, all the responsible owners that have got existing red KPIs, we're going to analyse the responses to the questions that have been asked, and also have a progress report on the corrective action that needs to take place, recognising sometimes that a 3-month period isn't sufficient time in order to move from red to amber or green, but also recognising through some of these KPIs things like long-term sickness. Again, HR have got a plan and policy in place, but actually we won't see the benefit of that, I don't think, for a number of months now. And certainly with the planned food inspections, a lot of it is due to sickness in the team. So again, through agency work and putting more resource in, we'll hopefully see over a period of time that that performance will improve. And certainly the sundry debtors, which is probably closer to my heart because it sits in my portfolio, we've undertaken some analysis, and actually one of the things that's hindering our performance is historical debt. So because we've got quite a lot of historical debt for various reasons, our KPI reporting is looking potentially worse than it actually is. So what we're going to look to do is split that KPI now into 2. We're going to have percentage of sundry debt outstanding within 28 days current year, because actually when you look at our collection rates in the current year for council tax, business rates and all of our sundry debts, we're performing quite strongly. And then we can start to see how the corrective action we're putting in place with things like payment plan, voicescape is then tackling the historical debt. So what we should start to see then is the positive performance that we're taking place with in-year collection, and over a period of time you'll see that the historical debt is having an improved performance as well. But yes, certainly it's going to take a couple of months to truly bed in, but I think the questions and the paper that the red rated KPI owners need to complete is just demonstrating actually just reporting it's red isn't good enough this year. We want to see what are you going to do in order to correct it, and actually every quarter can you then report through to us how that performance is improving. So yeah, I think that's a big step change from what it was last year, and actually it shows how as an organisation we're trying to evolve in terms of performance, and it could be that this approach doesn't quite work, but again we're being reactive and dynamic, and we'll just adapt and change accordingly. But yeah, that information will be available shortly.
Usually Councillor Lawrence goes for KPIs, I go for the numbers. The most significant variances are in staff costs. And I'm not picking on you, I'm just outlining an area where you probably have more detailed knowledge than others. But what's the story behind, say, finance, performance, legal and governance? The staffing variance of 664,000, the agency variance of just over $1 million. What's happening there? Because it seems to be quite persistent from year to year, doesn't it?
We have a focus area every quarter now when it comes to budget monitoring, and staffing is the focus area again for quarter 2. The realities are 58% of what we spend is staffing. So if anywhere is going to be a place to focus, it is that. I know in previous conversations there's been a lot of focus on the agency variance. So again, what we're looking now is comparing the agency variance and the staffing variance. So as the general fund overall, there's a net saving, or the net position between agency and staffing is an overall underspend or saving to the general fund. But talking specifically about finance, performance, legal and governance, there's a couple of things in there that it's worth mentioning. One, certainly for part of the year, we've had a vacant chief officer, legal and governance. We've had a vacant legal services manager. We've had a vacant financial services manager as well. All of those posts have been covered by agency staff because it's the statutory nature of the role, and all of those roles from an agency point of view come with quite a substantial premium. So yes, that's the position now. As you can see, we've got a permanent chief officer for legal and governance. We've still got vacancies in the deputy roles, but yeah, and I think it's the premium that is causing some issues there. I think also from a financial services team point of view, there was an issue over the summer where we had long-term sickness in the accounts payable team, which was having an impact on our ability to pay invoices on time. So a decision was made or approved by the chief executive to inject some extra accounts payable resource into that team. It was needed, and actually over a couple of months we've got that backlog down significantly now to the fact that there is no delay in paying invoices anymore. So a lot of it is short-term issues, but I think fundamentally there are vacancies in some of the more senior parts of those teams which do come with a premium, unfortunately.
Okay, just to follow up on that, the variance on staffing, sometimes they're adverse, sometimes they're favourable. Sometimes the favourable variances in terms of the pounds spent are the result of vacancies unfilled. So I question why one would always consider that to be a saving, because if the vacancy is unfilled, the work isn't being done, and there are consequences elsewhere in the organisation. So, for example, it's a fairly crude one, but it came up last night. If bins aren't collected because there are vacancies within the traded services team, that's not serving anybody anything. It puts the council in an invidious position where the reputation is at risk, and yet, on the other hand, it's claimed within the financial reports, oh well, we're doing quite well here because the overall cost of these particular teams is down, but actually it's concealing a bigger problem. How do you resolve that tension within a report like this?
Yeah, and you're correct, Councillor Freeman. Just because a variance is positive, just because there's an underspend doesn't mean it's good or bad. A large underspend or a large saving is perhaps has shown a bigger issue as a large budget pressure. But certainly, what we should be doing, or what we aim to do through the performance and finance reporting, is start to then you can analyse the KPIs against the financial position, and you can start to see where the correlation is in there. And the example that I've used quite a few times when I've been discussing this with the team, and it's probably a really bad example, but it helps to evidence it, is that if you look at, and this is a fictional example, so it's not, you won't find it in the documents, but the Ben Hall might have a huge budget pressure in relation to building cleaning, and everything, that's a real problem. But then if you look at the KPIs and see the visitors to the Ben Hall are absolutely through the roof, actually it demonstrates that we might need to do something in terms of budgeting to realign things. So look at the KPI in conjunction with the budget information, but yeah, you're right. But with all this, through the finance reports for the general fund and the HRA, we report the financial position of the organisation. I then work with the chief officers and the relevant portfolio holders to then put commentary around the financial health of the organisation. And it's not in this report because we've just shown the variances, because we haven't presented that report yet. But the report that goes to Cabinet will have an emphasis on the financial health of the organisation, not just focusing on the variance, whether they be positive or negative.
Okay, one final question, because I can see others are absolutely dying to jump in. On capital expenditure, the capital programme, you're reporting a saving of 0.017 million. It's not huge, it's not significant, but is that the saving a result of a timing difference, or is it a result of a genuine saving on the cost of delivering the project?
No, so the way that we report the capital programme, so when an item is added to the capital programme, we look to profile the years in which that spend's going to take place. Some schemes we think we know it's going to be in 1 year and it's fine. Some of these schemes span multiple years. So when we do the capital forecasting, you'll see it on page 5, we have a line for reprofiling. So if we think the capital project isn't going to be spent in the year in which the budget is, we then look at reprofiling, and what we then do at the end of the financial year is move the budget from 1 year to the next. So any variance that you see in the capital programme is a true budget saving or budget pressure.
I think my fellow councillor has probably stolen a couple of my follow-on questions, but it's good. So one would have been about that, the vacant posts and the impact on service delivery. It never seems to be that transparent. Okay, so yes, if you look at that and you look at that and you put the two together, you probably can make some decision. It would probably be useful if we could connect the two a little bit more. So if you make a saving there, the problem is there's a balance that service delivery has gone down. I think that was to Councillor Freeman's point. On the last one, the capital programme, if you see this money having to be reprofiled, it does suggest delay. Something is not being spent and there's delay. Is that correct in thinking that? And is that something that should really be exposed?
I think potentially with some of this, it's maybe optimism bias when the report. So what the budget setting process doesn't include setting the capital programme. What we have is through the capital strategy, the continuation programme is approved. So things that happen every year, IT replacement, and a few other bits and pieces. But when a request for a capital, for something to be added to the capital programme, a separate business case is then presented to Cabinet, and as part of that, there's a forecast in the profile of that spend. Sometimes it's just that through one reason or another, things like procurement take a little bit longer than the expectation. But what we always say through the capital strategy, reprofiling because of slight delays isn't a problem. What we're interested in, if you've got a capital programme item of £1 million, are you going to spend £1 million? And if it splits over years, then we can work around that. I think it does start to have an implication on the general fund, because when we set the budget for the financial year, we look at net cost of borrowing, which is the cost of interest paid versus the benefit from interest earned. And if all of the budget managers are suggesting the capital programme is going to be spent in a year, we base our interest calculations on that. So if that spend isn't incurred in the profile that we've identified, we've potentially budgeted for interest that we didn't need. Therefore, we've potentially generated, or there's been a budget saving required that wasn't necessarily needed at that point in time. So it can have an implication on the budget, and it also has a potential impact on our cash flow situation as well, because if just using the general fund as an example, it's a £6 million programme this year, £6.5 million programme, and if everyone's saying they're going to spend £6 million and we've only spent £500,000 in September, well, actually, we need to make sure we've got enough cash in the bank to cover that. So again, it has an impact on treasury management decisions as well. So whether it be revenue or capital, we need robust forecasts from budget managers, because it's not just isolated to reprofiling, because that's a technical accounting thing and it doesn't create any issues. But what we're trying to get the message out to the wider organisation is that it has an impact on service and strategic decision making if people aren't as if the forecasts aren't as robust as they could be, and potentially the organisation takes decisions in the run up to budget setting that it doesn't necessarily need to. So that's quite a long answer to your question. Sorry.
Moving on to another topic that was discussed last night, local government reorganisation. The timetable is currently published, puts us in a position where you'll have 2 more financial years to plan for. And there'll be an end point, and we don't know exactly what it is. But do you think that will affect the way in which we set our budgets and do our financial reporting? Because I would guess that a lot of the positions that we currently have are going to have to be unwound. You know, you've got reserves for particular events, which the probability of them happening in the 2 years goes from whatever percentage over the 4 years that they work forward in the medium-term financial strategy to a much more finely granulated set of circumstances where, you know, for example, with the capital programme, you know, we're going to have to accelerate parts of it if we deliver it as this body. How do you think that's going to impact on the reporting from quarter to quarter?
The purest Section 151 response to that question is...
It was a Section 151 question.
I know, but from my point of view, from a budget setting perspective, at this point in time, we're kind of ignoring the fact that LGR is coming in a number of years. In the run-up to 28, 29, when that new unitary is established, Rugby Borough Council needs to be a safe and legal operation. Therefore, our budget setting process is going to continue in a similar way to what it has done before. We got the information this afternoon actually what the potential funding situation could be in advance of the budget, so we'll do some work on that. I think the big impact will be based on the timetable that we've had so far. In October of next year, there'll be a structural changes order coming in from the Secretary of State, which will put some controls on what we can do as an organisation. I think and it will be around what we do from a capital point of view, and there will be a cap on capital spend of £1 million unless that changes. So again, from a capital programming point of view, what we've got in play now and what's in the programme will continue regardless. But yeah, there's quite a short window now in terms of getting new and significant items onto our capital programme, because even if the structural change order isn't introduced until October, I suppose the expectation is from government that we act in the spirit of what's coming, and we might to make some decisions around that as well.
And how do we deal with, I think, the somewhat justifiable fear that we've accumulated all these reserves and a cash pile, which, if we're not careful, may end up in the hands of a successor body?
Difficult, is it? Because I think we have got a healthy level of reserves in the general fund and the HRA, but the general fund, really the main show in town is the business rates equalisation reserve. And actually, as an organisation, we took a prudent and probably the right decision back in 2017 to put any growth in business rates above our baseline level of funding into that reserve. And what that has meant is, over the last couple of years, we've been able to balance the budget and have a fund our services. But the business rates equalisation reserve has only really escalated over the last 2 to 3 years, and we're getting probably £7-8 million a year in growth above our baseline level, which is going into that reserve. I've lost my train of thought now. About using reserves. So I suppose that the realities are, it's given us that business rates growth has given us some one-off benefits from an MTFS point of view, whereas the Conservative administration was putting that growth into reserve. The Labour administration is now putting using that additional business rates growth directly into the general fund to fund services. So that reserve will not increase anymore, and certainly I can start to see it based on conversation we're having that will start to be utilised. But actually, with that structural changes order, there's probably only so much we can do as an organisation. But also within our MTFS, we've got our reserve risk assessment, and what we do is look at our balance of reserves, look at our forecast to and from reserves, but then also look at the potential risks that are facing the organisation. And we always say, in the unlikely event that all those risks materialise, but if that situation did occur, then those reserve balances would be exhausted within 3 to 4 years anyway. It's an unlikely event, but what we're doing is no different to some of the other beneficiaries of business rates growth in the area. And certainly when you look at on our county neighbours, again, that they've all got reserve balances of a similar percentage to ours when you compare it to net spend in the general fund. What happens post reorganisation, can't really comment on that, but all of our earmarked reserves are earmarked for specific purposes, so HMO licences. So they would, in theory, just transfer across to the new organisation, and they will still be there for the purpose in which they were intended from, unless the shadow authority makes a decision on that. We've got general fund balances of about 10% for emergencies. Again, every organisation has got that, and whoever the new 151 would be in the new organisations would probably want to continue with that. I think for us it's the £16 million in the business rates equalisation reserve. But yeah, it's given us a lot of flexibility over the last couple of years, but it is a diminishing pot of money now that the reset is definitely going to happen from next year.
So just final clarification on reserves, and it's linked to capital expenditure. I mean, one of the largest reserves we have is for town centre regeneration.
Yes.
Do we still feel that 5 million is sufficient? And do we have a view as to whether it can be spent before reorganisation comes along?
Well, yeah, of that 5 million, last forecast that I saw, there was about £1.5 million that's not been potentially earmarked for things over the next couple of years. So potentially that's a decision for the administration around budget setting, as to whether they feel that the town centre reserve should be increased, decreased, disbanded. That's conversations for later on in the process. I couldn't answer that one at this stage.
We'll bring that one back.
Yeah, that should be fun. Thank you.
So are we saying that there's a very limited amount of reserves for ring fencing right now for a new administration?
No, we've got about the balance of reserves at the minute in the report is about 33 million in the general fund. We've got a healthy balance of reserves. I think it's the time in which to utilise those reserves is shortening, but also it's just understanding that there are potential risks facing the organisation over the next couple of years, and what we can't do running into LGR is not be safe and legal, and it's then carrying out analysis of how likely some of these risks are going to materialise, and we can't, the reserves can only be spent once. So what we don't want to be doing is racing to spend all that money, and then some of these risks materialise, and then we're in a position where we need to save more money in advance of LGR before we to have a balanced budget, because regardless of what happens post vesting date in the run up to that, Rugby Borough Council still needs to have a balanced budget every year.
Have a calculation of how much it will cost us in the in terms of this new administration, and how much reserves we can ring fence? Is there no costings on that?
I understand your question. Sorry, could you repeat?
We've got, you said 33 million in reserve, so we obviously, some of that you want to keep, don't you, so that you don't have later on there's not going to have any repercussions from what's going in terms of the costings for us. So you're keeping that as a kind of safety net, some of it, but the rest of it, or is there any that we can still ring fence for rugby, because after all this is rugby's money, isn't it?
I think that's a question I'd have to go back, and I think it's too early in the process in terms of LGR for me to really be able to answer that question at this stage. Because I guess what will happen when a shadow authority is established is they will make decisions around reserves. So at the moment, Cabinet and Council can approve the setup of reserves, contributions to and from reserves. what happens then when it transfers to the shadow authority? Presumably, well, one, that's probably a political conversation between the leaders of the various districts. But I suppose ultimately the shadow authority in the new organisation would make some of those decisions. So I would suggest that that's potentially a political question to deal with, rather than one that I can answer from an operational side of things.
I think in terms of the timeline for in terms of how long you've got, you said I think next year or something. You said about the reset, when it gets all reset. So I think
the business rate system is reset from the 1st of April 26. So at the moment, we generate around £11 million a year in business rates. If all things remain as they are at the minute, that would be reset and would be generating around. We'd be able to keep about £3 million of reserve. Of business rates income. So that there's the reset the business rate system, and there's the funding reform that's taking place as well. And then on top of that, we've got what we need to do in terms of transitioning to the new unitary model, the 1 or 2 council model after government made that decision in July.
Mm-hmm. So I think within that time frame, we need to think about that balance between ring fencing certain things, and also in terms of how much it may incur in terms of costs in the future. I think it's very important, because if we've got time constraints, I think it's really important to evaluate that.
You mentioned we have £33 million worth of generals. Yeah. Do you think we'll squeak by with that over the next 2 years? Or do we need to make further provision?
If we make further provision into those reserves, then we'd have to, the savings targets in year would need to be increased, because the only way that we can contribute from those reserves is to put money in from the general fund. So I think through the work that we're doing at the moment, it's just getting to a position where we've got a balanced general fund budget for 26, 27 and 27, 28. If on the back of that the administration wants to contribute more money into reserves, then that's part of the whole balancing act.
There's nothing to stop the administration saying, well, some of the reserves can be released for frontline services or for projects or spend that's been long delayed, that we would like to see done before the transition into a new authority.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
To clarify, but when this letter comes in October, or what?
Yeah, when the structural change, we will be any powers we've got to spend significant or invest significant sums of money will be really restricted. I think maximum revenue spend was 100,000. Maximum capital spend was £1 million. You can't carry out any restructuring as well. So I think it will. And you can see why they're doing it. But yeah, it will have an impact on our ability to do anything for the Borough of Rugby from October 26 onwards.
Thank you very much, John, for that very clear discussion, and thank you, members, for the questions, which have been very good. Budget setting process and obviously fees and charges, is that likely to come to our January meeting? Just to, yeah, okay. So we'll put those two in for the January meeting then. That's fine. Okay. Yes, yes, we would. We are the 15th of January.
Yeah, that's fine, because
Mm.
it'll be after, so a lot of the information will be, well, the draft budget report goes at the 8th, something like that, January. But yeah, we can, I'll speak to you offline and we'll just
Yeah.
what we can bring to,
Yeah.
to the meeting. But that
Yeah.
next year, good to have a conversation around
Mm.
fees and charges and any saving proposals that are going to be tabled at that meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. Thank you for being here and for your evening as well. So thank you. I appreciate it. Right. Our next item on the agenda is the work programme. Councillors, is there anything that you would like to add to the work programme that we have? Obviously, one item that I wish to add will be the town centre regeneration report. So that would come to us in January as well. Councillor New? Sorry.
Probably hear me now. I'd like to see something on the work programme looking at the fly tipping and the impact of Hunters Lane actually removing the restrictions now and letting people go more often from the 24th. So I'd like to see comparable from beforehand with the fly tipping and perhaps later on actually see if that decreases now that they're opening the Hunters Lane site.
I think it's as I understand it, it's a 6-month review period. So anything that came to this, that would then have to be reported to the waste management over board or whichever it's called at county council. So statistics may be a little delayed on that. So we're probably talking about 9 months' time.
Okay.
Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we can add it to the work programme, but I am saying that it may be...
The figures for the fly tipping at the moment, because I know there's been an excess for the fly tipping and things going on lately, so it'd be interesting to get the figures ready so that we can see if that actually decreases when they increase accessibility.
Yeah. One thing that you do have to bear in mind is that Coventry still have their booking system. And a lot of the fly tipping is on the Coventry border. So you do have to bear that in mind. Okay? Thank you.
I'll declare an interest here because I sit on a committee of at least 3 community groups. But I'll be quite interested in what the plans are for funding of community groups up to reorganisation.
So as part of the LDR, will go on after.
Yes, because these groups do an awful lot of work in the community, which is carried out by volunteers, which benefits the council insofar as we deal with antisocial behaviour, education, and so on. And the funding issue needs to be clarified.
Yes, I certainly support you with the town centre regen being coming in January. We have the local plan. We've had certain promises about information coming back to us that we haven't seen. Some of that was promised 6 months ago for September. We're now into, well, we'll be December before January before we talk again. So something perhaps after the town centre regeneration, maybe something a bit more. I asked for information about grave sites and things like that. I've seen nothing come through. And then perhaps if we can do that in January, we've still got customer journey, things like that, which we should think about scheduling in. We haven't got any dates against it, I think is my comment, and where we could start scheduling those in.